So today we have a deal, sort of, not really, maybe, with Iran and the US. I think the bottom line is that the US has lost the war, that the US appears to be giving up everything. I think we'll see that shape out in the days to come. And that the media is once again foolishly taking Donald Trump seriously and reporting on Donald Trump as if he's not a joke. And not all media, most media. And that is the great failure of the media. And that's what we're going to be kind of covering in today's live. I also, if I have enough time, want to talk about the reflecting pool, because that's just the ridiculous story that keeps on giving. Maybe we'll talk about the UFC fighter who, the racist, misogynist, bigoted UFC fighter who referred to Michelle Obama as a man. I did a post on that. Maybe we'll refer to maybe not though, because it just seems indicative of who Trump is, and who the people who organized the UFC event, and who the people are who have gone to it, who the people are that have responded on my responded on my socials about it, just what types of people they are. But I think because I've been off for a couple days, I think it's important to cover the Iran stuff first. So before we get into it, I just want to pull up the live chats. If you can just bear with me for a moment, and we'll get into it, guys. Okay, so YouTube, I've got you guys up. I can now see the YouTube chat. And Twitch. Okay, so YouTube, I've got you guys up. Twitch looks YouTube chat. Twitch looks okay. Twitch. I thought Twitch looked a little bit messy, but it looks good. YouTube, I've got you guys up. Twitch looks YouTube chat good. I think we're getting some feedback on YouTube. I thought Twitch would pop over there and turn the sound off. Twitch looks YouTube. Sorry, guys. I'm just there we go. Just trying to get this thing working. Okay, so YouTube, I've got you guys settled, and now I just have to get Substack settled, and we should be good to go. So and Substack looks settled too. So everybody looks like they're working today. I hope you guys are doing well today. I hope everybody had a good weekend. Sorry for no live yesterday. We were traveling back from Pennsylvania yesterday, and I just couldn't get to doing a live. So we had this deal with Iran, right? I think the first thing that I want you to understand is that we lost the war, right? We lost the war 10 days after the war started, maybe 11 or 12 days after the war started, right? We lost the war right after it started. As soon as the Iranians shut down the Strait of Hormuz, the war was over, basically. And I think the Iranians, they may not have been certain of that. They may not have known the extent and the degree of how stupid Donald Trump is and how incompetent the people are around him. I think they were probably stunned that the U.S. leadership structure did not anticipate that the Strait of Hormuz would be shut down and the war would be lost, and that they would win the war this easily. I really think, because it's kind of like, if you don't live in the U.S., even if you see the U.S. as an adversary, though, but if you're not living in the U.S. or you're not fighting with the U.S. in terms of negotiating with Donald Trump or one of the idiots who surrounds him every day, if you're not dealing with the village idiot, day in and day out, it's very likely that you really don't know how ridiculous he is. It's very difficult, I think, to wrap your brain around just how astonishingly crazy and incompetent this man is. I've often said that Donald Trump has superhuman powers, two superhuman powers, and those are crazy and stupid. He is as stunningly crazy as can be perceived, and then he's actually crazier. And he is as remarkably he's unthinkably stupid. Like it's just it's super it's like superhero level crazy and stupid. And I think when each new country gets involved with some sort of altercation with him, whether it is uh, a negotiation about tariffs, or it's a debate about whether or not he's going to invade Greenland, or whether it's a war. Because the American military is strong and competent. If you had an attack like we had in Venezuela, where they just didn't have the military prowess to, and where the whole thing lasted for like 3 hours, right? You don't have enough time for Donald Trump's crazy and stupid to enter the picture in any capacity, right? It's just there's no strategic fiasco. There is no strategic blunder. The military plans an operation. They successfully executed the operation in Venezuela. The operation ended, and that was the end of it, right? That was kind of the end of it. And then Trump just babbled about it incessantly. I'm sure they're fucking things up now as we move forward, but nobody's paying attention to it. No press is reporting on it, and unfortunately, nobody cares about it in Venezuela. But when you have a situation like Iran, where you just had an epic amount of crazy and stupid, I think the Iranians were shocked by how easy it was for them to win. I mean, they had to endure losses that were significant. They had infrastructure losses. They had obviously the loss of lives when it came to the Ayatollah and leadership structure. They had the loss of lives of innocent civilians, and they certainly didn't count on. And even this repressive regime in Iran didn't probably look forward to the fact that we murdered, 180 little girls, when we blew up a girls' school, all of which the U.S. still isn't taking responsibility for. Drunken Pete Hegseth still says we're investigating it, right? But aside from those catastrophic and strategic problems that the Iranians had with the war, they could never have imagined that their foe, that the person that they were going against, although they knew how dumb Donald Trump was, you don't really know until you know. You know what I mean? You don't really know what kind of imbecile you're dealing with until you actually deal with them. And so I think the Iranians were pleasantly surprised at how easy this was. And I think they were pleasantly surprised that when they went and they shut down the Strait of Hormuz, that it was so easy to shut it down, and that they properly gamed the politics of the whole situation, knowing that the idiot couldn't or wouldn't send ground troops in, that he would stop attacking at some point because he had to, because politically it was such a disaster, and knowing that they would bring the whole world to its knees economically. And I think their shock was because every other U.S. president would have wanted to do this, perhaps engage in some sort of military. Every president except Obama, who actually solved the nuclear problem with the Iranians, right? But every other U.S. president might have wanted to engage in something, right, to try to stop the threat of, the long-term threat of Iran in the to destabilize the Middle East. And, with our relationship with Israel, the U.S. probably would have wanted to, help remove the threat that Israel, that over decades the Iranians have posed toward the Israelis, right? But none of them ever did it because they knew because we had baseline intelligence forever that that was clear that if you do it, the Iranians will close down the Strait of Hormuz. It will shut down 15 to 20% of all the energy that the whole world uses, and it will be a total disaster. And the only way to engage in regime change and to defeat the Iranians would be to have a long, prolonged war with boots on the ground in Iran, and every other president knew that, but the idiot didn't. Drunken Pete Hegseth didn't, and maybe they were told this, or maybe they weren't, but they didn't. Whether they were told it or they weren't, they were too dumb to understand it, right? So they didn't. So they engaged in this effort, which obviously the idiot thought was going to be a 2-day affair, like Venezuela, or a 1-day affair. And he was blindsided, and he just kept fucking up every minute, every step along the way. So finally, we reach this moment, right, where now the media is covering this ceasefire agreement seriously. And I think that I'm talking about the mainstream media, legacy media. I think that is, if Donald Trump is the most ridiculous participant in this whole war with Iran nonsense, if he's sort of the joke of the war, which he is, right? If he's the joke of the world, which he is, I feel like legacy media and most media outlets are the second. I mean, a distant second, but I feel like they're the second joke of this war because the way they cover it so seriously. And I don't mean you don't take war seriously. You do. You do. But the fact that they talk about President Trump, is holding out today, or President Trump, has made this decision, or President Trump has, when you refer to this imbecile as someone who is executing a strategic plan, or who is reacting in any way, shape, or form, even like a remotely normal person, when you frame your coverage of a situation like this, when you frame it in a way that is suggestive of any sort of normalcy, if you listen to the Midas Touch News Network, if you listen to Ben Masalis, and again, Ben is frequently over the top because I think his emotions sometimes get the best of him, and again, I can understand it, because how can they not? When people are being harmed, people are dying. Money is, we're losing billions and billions of dollars. We have unlimited corruption. I mean, I get how, even though the Midas Touch News Network is covering the news, I get how Ben can kind of lose his shit not infrequently, right? I understand that. But when you look at the way Ben Masalis covers at the Midas Touch News Network the absurdity of, he covers this is the way he covers everything, but he presents the news to us about the war and about the ceasefire, and now about the ceasefire agreement, right? But he presents that information also in a way that he clearly lets the audience know that this is insane, that this is ridiculous, and that Donald Trump is incompetent, that Donald Trump is crazy. He doesn't present a narrative, sort of a straight narrative, where he says the president of the United States has offered this ceasefire agreement, and the Iranians, and the Iranians have this perspective, and the president of the United States has this perspective. Masalis doesn't present it that way, because that's not the news, right? The news is, that's not the truth, right? That's the mainstream media trying to maintain access to the village idiot Donald Trump by not reporting properly, and because they know he'll get mad at them if they do. They don't want to get sued again, and they just don't have the courage. I mean, individual reporters do, and I'm not saying that mainstream media doesn't criticize the idiot, because they do, but you can't have this just straight news narrative about what is completely absurd going on Donald Trump consistently lying, Donald Trump making things up, Donald Trump telling us something about, say, the ceasefire agreement. They're never going to have a nuclear weapon. That's in the agreement. No way, shape, or form. There'll never be a weapon. They're never. But from credible reporting coming out of Iran, coming out of other international outlets, full well that there's, no matter what the actual terms of the agreement are, that we still haven't seen, the framework for the agreement, right? That it's clear that there will be there has been no discussion of the nuclear issue. That whether that's another 60 or 90 days out after the ceasefire is signed, that's not true. So when you present as a news outlet, you present Donald Trump said this, and the Iranians said this, but you don't present the color around the news that Donald is lying, because your own news agency, whether it be CBS News, ABC, well, CBS, forget about it, ABC News, NBC News, Politico, even Al Jazeera, when you don't present, obviously not Fox News because that's nonsense, but when you don't present the story in a way that says, look, the president, you can call, they can call him President Trump. I wouldn't expect them to call him the village idiot. And you're right, Gail, and he always lies. He only lies. And again, Gail, that's exactly what the news outlets should be saying. By this point, you're covering, you are objectively covering the news right now. If you're NBC News and you say President Trump lied and said that a decision has already been made in the agreement, in the 14-point agreement, that when President Trump said a decision has already been made, that Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, that we've accomplished that, President Trump lied. Like, that's a true statement. And, again, I don't expect the news to say it the way I say it. The village idiot is full of shit, right? I don't want mainstream media to speak like I do. I rely on mainstream media. The world clearly doesn't rely on a loudmouth like me re-reporting the news. The world relies on legitimate media reporting. So, if you were to say we haven't seen the deal yet, but our reporting, our sources in the Middle East and in Pakistan, our sources are telling us that the agreement, that there's no agreement about nuclear, been no discussion about nuclear weapons, that the President of the United States, that President Trump is lying about that right now. And the Iranians are saying that it's 60 days. There'll be a discussion about nuclear weapons in 60 days, but we haven't independently confirmed that yet because we haven't seen, nobody's released a copy of the agreement yet, right? It's okay. News outlets, it's okay to say the President of the United States is lying and that the Iranians might be telling the truth. Because that's what's real, right? That's what's really happening. So, but when you cover it in this way that you become an enabler for the market manipulation for the village idiot Donald Trump, to make sure the stock market continues to go up, when credible news outlets perpetuate bullshit that the village idiot is propagating by normalizing it in the way they present the news, and then the markets subsequently respond not just to the idiot's words, but they also subsequently respond to news outlets that they deem to be credible. You are now part of enabling idiotic autocracy, and you should be ashamed of yourselves. And I in the era of Trump, I don't like to criticize the media, because the idiot is always referring to the media as fake news. It's fake news. It's the fake news. They're horrible. And then you remember when he was on the enemy of the people kick for a while. They're the enemy of the people. They're out to get the people. They're terrible. We got to get rid of them. We gotta get rid of him. So I don't like to criticize even main. I do it, but I don't want to do it. You know, to criticize mainstream media, because there's such a target for the idiot. But when mainstream media, when media personalities, I'm so sorry, guys. I just hear somebody outside my door or outside the house. I'm just hearing noise out there. I'm just curious as to what it is. It's a little distracting because it sounds like they're right near my house. But it must be people just walking by because nobody's rung my doorbell yet. But hang on, guys. Hate to do this during a live, but let me just go check. My son's home today, so I get a little bit extra antsy. Let me just see if anybody's here because it literally sounds like there's people right outside the door. Don't go away. Hold that thought. Okay. All right, guys. My apologies. Everything seems to be in order. I think it's probably just people walking by the house and they were just super loud. These things happen. So anyway, my point is that I don't I continue to be disappointed by mainstream media, and I don't understand. I can't wrap my brain around it. I don't under the only thing that's again I think it's access and fear because I can't understand how during the Biden administration mainstream media outlets were rightfully quick to criticize Biden's physical decline and to question it. And they were quick to criticize the Biden administration in general. Rightfully so. That's their job. But when it comes to this administration, as much as a lot of mainstream media outlets will criticize his behavior, they will still normalize that same behavior that they're willing to criticize and inadvertently enable his stupidity and enable his level of authoritarianism. When what I was saying about Ben Masalis is he doesn't do that. Ben will come on and he will provide you the news, whether you like how animated he gets or not. I get it. But he also provides the actual news about how ridiculous this is. About and what he does, what they do on the Midas Touch News Network is they take their previous reporting, where they take the previous reporting that was indicative of Trump lying and cheating and corruption, and they show you the through line to the current story. They show you, well, this is where this, remember we talked about this 3 weeks ago, about this particular lie with the Iran war, and we showed you how Donald Trump was lying. We called him a liar. And you can see how that lie led to this lie, that lie led to this lie, that lie led to this lie, and here we are. An example would be, and I'm going to show you a video clip from it today. An example would be Midas Touch, I'm sure, was reporting weeks ago about how desperate Donald Trump was to end the war, which was clear. They consistently will have reported over and over and over again how Donald Trump kept lying. They were long before anybody else. They were telling us, all right, this is the 15th time that Donald Trump has told us a deal is right around the corner. This is the 23rd time that Donald Trump has told us we can expect a deal in 2 days. So now the media some media outlets are telling us it's been, 37 times or 39 times or something. The Midas Touch led you all up to that, pointed it out moment by moment by moment, so as not to normalize the things he was saying, the lies that Donald Trump was saying about a deal happening, right? So they took their audience. and they explained the reporting, the facts behind the lies and why he was lying, while mainstream media was simply reporting, well, President Trump said today that the war should be ending in 2 days. And that was it. And now we get to this moment where, where there's a lot of discussion about 39 times that he's lied, and the mainstream media will bring that up. It's not like they won't say it, but it'll be a quick news blurb that'll go away. They haven't educated the public about how we got to this point, right? The Midas Touch News Network, after the AP, which is a credible news outlet, reported just a week ago. Maybe it was a little less than a week ago, right? The AP reported that the United Arab Emirates paid the Iranians $3 billion not to attack them, right? And then and reported that $3 billion was a first installment, and that it could be as high as $10 billion, or maybe even as high as $20 billion. That the United Arab Emirates was willing or agreed to pay the Iranians up to $20 billion not to attack them, right? And then that AP story further went on to explain that nobody knew where that money was coming from. Nobody knew if that was just UAE money, just money that the UAE had, just a straight up payment. We're going to pay you this money, and don't. I'm sorry, my son's coming in. It's okay. Just was going to straight up pay that money and out of their own pocket, or if that money was from money that they had that was sanctioned. So it was Iranian money that the UAE was holding, or most likely if that was American money, if that was money that came, or from anyone, money that came from another country, aka being the United States of America, that was somehow being secretly filtered through the UAE so that Donald Trump's fingerprints were not all over it, right? So that was a lead up story. The AP reported it. No, I didn't see any mainstream news outlet even pick it up. I didn't see them even mention it. It just disappeared, right? They didn't. That's a blockbuster story. But why did the media not pick it up? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe they're busy with other things, but they never picked it up. I'm sorry, it was a Reuters story, not an AP story. And but there's a through line, right? And that through line takes you to the Village Idiot, the reporting that came out that inevitably we may be paying the Iranians up to $300 billion to not be in the war, right? That story led to this story. And now everybody's picking up that $300 billion story. I'm going to show you a little bit of a clip of J.D. Vance basically admitting it was true with the Village Idiot. We're not going to pay him $300 we're not going to pay him anything. They're not going to get anything from us. We're not paying them anything. And as a matter of fact, we're going to, they're going to have the ultimate consequence if they don't do what I want them to do, right? All that bullshit, right? But again, the flaw with the normalization or the lazy media coverage of this stuff, the fatal flaw with this was that everything leads to everything else. And unlike the Midas Touch News Network, who covered this in the beginning, and then who covered the story about the United Arab Emirates, which is the follow the money story, which was right there for every media outlet to cover, to pick up on. You picked up on, and now they can make the connection, right? They can connect the through line, right? Oh, well, you have this story a week ago that the U.S. may have been funneling money through the UAE to pay off the Iranians so that the Iranians will stop the war, to in essence bribe them to stop the war, because Donald Trump's supporters they do not like us paying off Iran, because that's supposedly what Obama did. Supposedly $150 billion or whatever in cash on a bunch of planes, like the idiot and the MAGA faithful like to tell us that Obama sent plane loads of cash over to Iran, right? So the last thing that the MAGA extremists want to see is the idiot paying the Iranians cash, right? But we had potentially him sneaking cash to them, right? Laundering cash to them, right? You know what I mean? And now we have potentially $300 billion more. But all the people who pay attention to mainstream media are seeing at this moment, the only thing they're seeing is the 300 billion, right? And then that's going to be a story that's going to last for 2 or 3 days. Actually, I think it's going to blow up. I think it's going to last for more. I actually think that, you know, as we get closer to the Friday signing of this agreement, and the release of this agreement, if it gets released, and the administration doesn't lie about it, I think that $300 billion story is going to blow up even more so. It's going to be more and more reporting on it, but it would have so much more of an effect on the public if the public understood how broad this potential $300 billion bribe to keep the Iranians from being in a war with us, right, to improve Donald Trump's political fortunes, right, how much broader that is if you take the story back to its inception, and if the country would have been able to follow that story. And the media just can't do it. The mainstream media can't do it. They clearly won't do it. And I mean, it's unfortunate. I mean, I don't feel as stressed out about it because it's going to. It seems like the mainstream media outlets, have rendered themselves all but useless anyway. The future of media is independent reporting. I mean, that's clear. Independent reporting just has to grow larger, so it has the resources that mainstream media has. In other words, the Midas Touch News Network does not have tons of reporters on the scene in Iran and in the Middle East. They don't have they have some reporting coming directly out of Ukraine now, so they've grown a little bit. Some direct reporting coming directly out of Canada. They have a couple of reporters, or at least like a bureau chief and one reporter in DC. So they're growing. They're getting there. They're building that infrastructure, but it's slow, and it's it takes time, and we still rely on mainstream media. We need them. We wouldn't know anything without them. So I hate. I really, really don't like. I really don't like talking about them like this. I feel like it further feeds Donald Trump's narrative of fake news. But it's not fake news. It's lazy news. It's news. It's access. It's desperation for access. And I just hope. I don't want to see the mainstream media outlets disappear, or I certainly don't want to see them disappear before independent media has a broad enough infrastructure that it can replace mainstream media completely. Midas Touch Network needs to be way bigger. Independent journalists. Well, I'm not really an independent journalist. I'm a big mouth on the internet, but people like me need to be way bigger. Even the big influencers need to be way bigger. On the pro-democracy independent media community, it needs to be way bigger before it can be expected to adequately replace mainstream media outlets. But and we're not there yet. So I want mainstream media to get better, and I just don't. They're like the DNC. They just can't stop doing the same shit over and over again. I know they have corporate overlords, and saying someone like CNN, their corporate overlord, is an ass-kissing Trump sycophant. CBS News is gone because the Ellisons basically control that. The Oracle, Larry Ellison and his Nepo baby son, who are trying to take over the part of the entertainment infrastructure system. They're going to have CNN. They have CNN now. Last week, the merger between or the buyout of CNN was completed by the Ellisons. So the whole thing's going to turn into a right wing shit show. So that's not going to get any better. Gail, sometimes it seems like the mainstream press is complicit in market manipulation, and me too. I agree. Also, Lacey, they are. They are. I don't. Maybe I'm too naive. I don't think it's intentional. I don't think the mainstream press is. I don't think like your favorite or lack thereof, right? Anchor on CNN or NBC News is thinking to themselves, I'm going to propagate or I'm going to report that Donald Trump just said that we're 2 days away from the deal so that I can benefit financially because just called my broker who trades commodities, oil futures, and so I can get him to, so I can benefit. Or I'm gonna, as soon as I finish my my reporting for today, so I'm going to hop onto E-Trade and make my trades, right? I don't think that they're obviously that's, I mean, Trump is too dumb to do that, but the people around him have instructed him how to do that. That's clear, right? And we know because there was reporting. Bloomberg reported, I think it was Bloomberg, reported about all the the massive amount of trades that they do on his behalf, that he affects his billions and billions of dollars he's earning through insider trading. I don't think news anchors are consciously doing that. I don't think they're engaging personally in insider trading, and I don't know if their bosses are. I mean, maybe their bosses are. So, yeah, I think that's right, Gail. I think I think that's how I see it. It's definitely an unfortunate byproduct of the reporting of probable lies. And the thing is that they're not even probable anymore. Like, I mean, I think you can be a serious journalist and you can report. I think you can report that Donald Trump is lying, right? I think the assumption is that when he's speaking, he's lying. I don't think that's subjective anymore, right? And when he's not lying, he doesn't know anything. And again, they don't report that he doesn't know anything. They don't report that he's an idiot, right? I mean, they report as if he knows something, and objectively he knows nothing. And it's quite staggering to me, I guess, for lack of a better term. Anyway, that I didn't think I was going to go that far into the media stuff today, but I think it needs to be called out and probably called out over and over again, with the caveat that I'm not Donald Trump. I don't think the media is the enemy of the people. I still respect the press. I use the press I don't have the tools to do independent reporting myself. I have been thinking about it though, as I'm looking for ways to grow the community. But I'm not doing that. I used to do that, but I haven't been doing that. I'm just doing loudmouth, analysis with bad words interjected and insults thrown in. So that's my brand. But I need we need the media to do those analysis, to do that reporting still. So I hope they get better. I'm just always hoping they find a way to get better. I've given up that they're actually going to do it. I hope for it, but I've given up on it. And I hope that our democratic infrastructure can survive this until independent media grows into what it's meant to be. And I'm hopeful that will happen, because mainstream media has failed and is going to continue to fail. Angie, I'm glad you did. The current legacy media is just afraid and controlled by money. It's a fair point. I hope that will change someday. The press has to be the ones to keep democracy solid, and they're not doing it now, or not now is what Angie's wrote. You're right. You're right, guys. I've I was a reporter for years, and I was a super objective reporter when I did my reporting. It was hard, right? Because I like have a lot of opinions. It really wasn't natural for me when I started doing my reporting. I had left about a 10-year career in IT that I never really liked that much. And I was working for those 10 years for for two different companies or two different nonprofit organizations. And I had always been an entrepreneur, so I didn't like it at all. And I left those jobs and fumbled around for about 3 or 4 years, maybe 4 years, doing. I don't think I've told you this story already, but it seems appropriate to interject it again. Um, I fumbled around for about 3 or 4 years. I tried out film school, graduate film school online, which I don't recommend. It's a way to spend $30,000 and not learn anything, or borrow in my case. I mean, I learned a lot, but it wasn't worth the money. But I learned that I know how to write, and and then I had jobs and like retail jobs and shitty jobs and a little bit of computer consulting, and then I decided with my love of politics to try my hand out at journalism. And when I first started, I was writing, like I said, super objective stories based on. I was rewriting mainstream news articles, CNN, NBC News, even occasionally Fox News. I was just even before I was getting paid, and then when I started getting paid, I was just repurposing news. So as objective as they were, I was writing very objective stories, right? And then when I really got my first um, job, if you can call it that, because I wasn't being paid very much, but where I had an opportunity to write for Rant Media, um, where I really had an opportunity to write stories that were op-eds, opinion pieces, and things like that, where I could kind of let my opinions flow a little bit. I still tried to maintain a certain degree of objectivity, especially about Trump. I mean, they were subjective, but everything was based on real things. It was based on facts, and I still did some straight reporting. For when I worked with Rant, I did some straight. I did a right before the 2018 election. I think it was between the 2008. Oh no, the 2020 elections. I think it was 20. Was it 2020? No, I wasn't still with him in 20. Maybe it was 2016. I don't remember. It was one of the one. It was it, but it was one of the elections. But I did a whole series of explainer pieces, which was to teach the audience. It must have been a presidential election because it was introducing the audience to all the different players, uh, power players in D.C. It was Mitch McConnell and Chuck Schumer and all the members of Congress, and introduce them. And it was also to teach people about the Electoral College, but that was still super objective writing. It just kind of was what it was. And then when I left politics and I went into crypto, I was writing these feature articles where I would take. They were objective in that they were just well researched, deep dive, factual pieces where I did a lot of interviewing. So there was no opinion whatsoever. I mean, they were just informative long form feature articles. So I guess I guess the reason I'm sharing all that with you is having had that experience, and I can't say that I've been a journalist for 30 years. I was only a journalist for that period of time. When I started doing social media like this, I stopped calling myself a journalist because what I'm doing isn't journalism. It's analysis. It's yelling about Trump and calling him names. That's not journalism. There's a place for it, but it's not journalism. But as I kind of watch, I sort of watch the media just failing so significantly. I, that part of me that loves journalism, that loves objective reporting, understanding that objective reporting now means calling crazy crazy, but not using the word crazy. It means reporting on Donald Trump's mental illness. It means interviewing. Objective reporting now, in my mind, means interviewing doctors on mainstream television every day about Donald Trump's dementia. It means interviewing doctors every day about Donald Trump's swollen ankles and the lies and his the fact that he can't walk straight, that he kind of goes like this. Like, I shouldn't be getting my news about Donald Trump's health. And the guy is amazing. I mean, don't get me wrong. This is the world we live in right now. But my primary source of news about Donald Trump's health shouldn't be a guy who is a physical therapist, who treats old people, who is on TikTok and Instagram, and he's spot on. I mean, I do agree with him a lot. Who is reporting day in and day out, telling us each day about what is happening, what he sees from his professional experience going on with Donald Trump. It should be doctors, you know, it- um, uh, doctors who specialize in gerontology, who are at University of Pennsylvania Hospital and, the Mayo Clinic, and they should be on, my guy on TikTok and Instagram should have all the success and accolades he deserves. His reporting is excellent. His I his he there's a space for him, but he should be the follow-up news, right? He should be the dessert after the dinner, right? You know what I mean? He shouldn't be the primary source of news, right? But it's not happening, and the journalist in me struggles with that. Again, I see it in Midas Touch, they're doing it to the extent that they can. Um, but we need more. I just when I think about the different niches that I might want to fill, um, and I don't fill them because there's only, I have a hard enough time doing what I'm doing. It's that lack of, the world desperately needs someone to fill a news outlet, and again, Midas can't do it all. They just don't have the resources, and they can't cover it all. But should fill that type of objective reporting about the things that are not that the current news outlets consider to be subjective, considered to be like Donald Trump's health, like Donald Trump's. It would be. We could even categorize it out. It would be his health, his lying, his physical health, his mental health, or lack thereof, both of them, his consistent lying, his stupidity. Like those all should be news stories covered constantly. The Epstein files story shouldn't ebb and flow with the whims of the news cycle or the whims of Donald Trump's behavior. The Epstein story should be a constant, a credible news outlet. You should have a team, the New York Times, the Washington Post, Politico, NBC News. There should be folks who are dedicated. It should be a beat. You should have reporters who are on the Epstein files beat. You could, I mean, just imagine that. Take this in for a second. Like, the Epstein files has evolved into the never ending story that doesn't go away. And you have millions of documents that independent journalists and researchers are still going through without the resources of mainstream media, right? You have for those of you on Substacks, we have probably a handful of people who now make a living on Substack research, just going through the Epstein files and reporting what they found, right? And it doesn't get any more attention than the 75,000 subscribers that they have, which is great, right? But that's not everyone. And imagine if you had that work going on, but they were collaborating with 3 beat reporters at the Washington Post whose full-time job it is to cover the Epstein cover-up, or to cover the Epstein. I mean, imagine if, again, if you had media outlets, who have the resources, who have multiple reporters, if you had reporters, their job, 5 days a week, 8 to 10 hours a day, was to dig up Epstein stories, to go through those files, to interview, find new victims, discover, victims who haven't been found yet, discover people hiding in the shadows who have done the stuff, go and interview them, right? Continue to investigate the administration. I mean, this is absolutely a news story, right? You could. Why don't we have beat folks covering? They're covering the economy, right? But you can have a beat. You could have. Why is it that we don't have the New York Times, the Washington Post doesn't have somebody on the tariff beat, right? Not just covering tariffs when the idiot talks about them or when he threatens them, right? Why in the business in the business news outlets do we not have beat reporters covering tariffs? The tariff story doesn't go away. It's a full-time story that is affecting people every single day. You have local news coverage. You could have a beat reporter covering tariff at the international level. You could have Washington Post could have one beat reporter covering the tariffs at the international level, flying around the world, finding how tariffs are affecting foreign governments, friends and foes, foreign businesses. There's an endless number of stories. You could have one who covers DC, and you're covering the tariff. You're covering the corruption. How many stories are covered up related to tariffs that are just going to be corruption stories? You can imagine it, right? Right. So cover DC, cover the corruption stories in DC. The U.S. trade negotiator, I can't even think of his name. I don't even know what it is, and as well as crazy fucking nut job Peter Navarro. The tariff beat reporters should be talking to them every day, right? There's so much news that we're just not being told about, that's not being unearthed because independent media doesn't have the resources and mainstream media just won't do it. Then you could have a third tariff beat reporter who covers the domestic side. Go to, covering stories at manufacturers and small businesses and, what's going on with how the tariffs affect. Guys, when I could tell you right now, I was getting, although I've stopped doing interviews, and I stopped doing interviews hopefully temporarily for two reasons. One was because I had a major platform issue in terms of my live streaming, and I haven't really, I've got it relatively fixed now using this new application called OBS, but I don't have my interview function fixed. And secondly, I stopped covering them because I just wasn't large enough. I haven't grown large enough, and nobody was, we were watching them, but they were a tremendous amount of work, and I wasn't growing with them. Hang on one second, guys. I know. I'll be out there in just a few minutes. I just need you to chill. I'm almost done. You're good. You're good. Deep breaths. My son has started summer vacation, and he's home now, and he wants me to make lunch for him. But honestly, he's 11. He can make his own lunch, so he knows how to cook. He knows how to make a sandwich. So he can. So if he wants to wait, he's gonna have to wait till the live is over. On that note, though, parenting, a little bit of parenting information in there. So for me at this point, unless I go in a different direction and I start just doing that, covering news and trying to build a news network or something, which I don't know if I have it in me to try something else new. It's not feasible, but I think there's a need for it. There's a niche for it, right? All of these stories are not being covered because there's no one doing it, and the people who should be doing it, who have the resources to do it, just aren't, because they don't want to lose access to the idiot. There's so much news. If the Washington Post and NBC News and well, forget about CBS News, but if they all were like, fuck the idiot, Let's do what we do. Let's do real journalism. Let's cover the real news. If we lose access, we lose access. Then you have so much news to cover, so many stories to cover. You know what I mean? There's so much out there, and the Washington Post and New York Times are struggling to get subscriptions. They would blow up if there were, in a good way. Their subscription base would blow up if they really covered the corruption in DC right now. Really deeply covered. If they really covered the tariffs, if they really covered the war, right, effectively. I mean, it really makes me think as, I haven't lied to you guys at all about my struggles with my growth. As a one person, news analysis outlet, and I've shared with you guys many times my own frustration about my lives growing effectively, and my verticals are growing. Verticals are, Instagram, Facebook. I'm getting some growth there as well, but it's not what I had hoped. So I often think about, I'm thinking about it right now, like, what do I do next? What am I going to do next? And I've thought about this, but I don't, I don't know if I don't know if that's really my lane. It's something I'm considering, but irrespective, that I just think the need is there, and our democracy is screaming and crying for it. Anyway, that's all the news. That's that whole story. I didn't think I was going to go on a whole media tear today, but sometimes it happens. One more thing I want to go over with you very quickly with you guys, and I got to make this kid lunch because I got a briefing in just a few minutes. Isn't that beautiful, guys? Look at that. Look at that. Look at that. Remember the idiot told us, it's going to be fantastic. I'm going to make DC so beautiful. It's going to be so beautiful. You never saw anything like it. It's so beautiful. I'm going to make it so beautiful. You never, but Obama, it was a mess. Every president, you needed your favorite president to make DC beautiful. $14.2 million to fix the reflecting pool, to make it American flag blue, sky blue, right? They're going to fix the leaks. The fucking idiot hires some pool company that, fixed his pools at Mar-a-Lago or wherever the fuck, right? Cost $14.2 million of taxpayer money. The pool company went in, I think it was called Atlantic Contractors or some shit. They went in there and they drained the reflecting pool, and you saw them in there painting it, and cleaning shit, and waterproofing it supposedly. And then they put the water back in. They bragged about it. We had these AI generated, these photoshopped images of the Washington Monument. You could see it going up, and then you could see the supposed in the reflecting pool. It was so beautiful. It was so clear that it actually reflected the monument down. And oh my God, it was stunning, right? Just the genius of Donald Trump. And like everything else Trump touches dies, right? That's such a great saying. I can't remember the name it'll pop into my head, of the guy who said that, came up with that phrase. And here we are, weeks later. It's never looked worse, right? The reflecting pool is a putrid algae green. It almost looks like a toxic sludge dump, right? I really can't say if it looks worse now than before, because I haven't been to DC in several years. I haven't been to the reflecting pool in probably 20 years. So I don't know if it looks worse. But I think we can consistently say it's not any better. Now, did the pool company effectively fix the leaks? I don't know. There's no way we will know, because the Park Service is not going to tell us if these people fucked up and water is still leaking into the reflect. Oh no, it wasn't Lawrence O'Donnell, Gail. It was. It sounds like something he would say, but it was one of the guys who started the Lincoln Project. He's a real he's a real a wonderful shit stirrer. I just can't think of his name right now. It'll pop into my head. Um, but anyway, this so I put a couple of posts up on this, right, about this reflecting pool on my vertical socials, and the MAGAs, especially on Facebook, were like, "You don't understand, you dumb fuck, you libtard. You don't understand how it works. They were cleaning, they were fixing the leaks, and you done. And Obama did 35 million, and it didn't work. It still leaked. You dumb fuck." And they were explaining to me how like leaks and stuff work and what the next steps are, however much that's supposed to cost us. But you know, I don't care. I don't give a shit about what any of them are saying. Um, Sorry about that, guys. The bottom line is that this idiot promised everybody it would be beautiful. He spent $14.2 million, and just days later, it looks like this. And it's just indicative of everything he does, of his blistering stupidity. Oh, so Lacey, it looks worse. I've been there before. The darker blue heats the water, making for more algae growth. I've read that certainly makes sense. And look, if you hire a pool company, right, your favorite pool company, to fix the reflecting pool, if you hired your favorite swimming pool company, they genuinely might not know. You probably never had a $14 million contract in their lives. They generally probably would not know that if you paint the pool blue, that you're going to increase the heat source, right? When the sun bakes down on the reflecting pool, and that the algae that was there before is going to be worse. And I can assure you, this is not going to get any better, because the idiot at the White House is going to act impulsively because of all the pressure on him, and he's going to hire some other dumb schlock, and they're going to fuck it up more. And eventually, he's just like the Iran war, just like everything else. He's just going to walk away and surrender, blame it on someone else, and tell us how much he won, how beautiful it is. Anyway, my friends, I wanted to share that with you. I'm going to wrap the live for now. I got to go make this kid lunch, and then I have my 12:30 briefing. Just look out for the verticals today. I hope I'll have them everywhere today, and I'm always hoping to squeeze in another live. I don't know if I'll get one in today. But I love you guys, 1 minute at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 day at a time, one live at a time. The lives are, I so appreciate you all, because the lives make their group therapy for me, and I receive much more than I give in these lives. So I thank you guys. It's been a while since I've thanked you guys for being here with me, because it helps. It helps to get through this madness. Anyway, I will see you guys all soon. Have a good rest of the day, and I'll have the recordings up on these in a little bit. Okay, be well, everybody. We just got to wrap these up one at a time. So YouTube is out. Twitch,